He read the invitation back to himself one more time before sealing the envelope, the way a man rehearses a punchline he already knows will land. The event was a product launch, a gala, technically, the kind with a guest list that got leaked to TechCrunch 2 weeks early, and a venue that required a non-disclosure agreement just to enter. His company, Stratum AI, had been building toward this night for 3 years, and he had made sure that among the 400 names on that list, one of them was hers. Not because he needed her there. That was the point. He didn't need her anymore. He hadn't needed her in a long time, or so the story went in his version of events, which was the only version he had told so many times it had calcified into something he mistook for truth. Her name was Camille Osei. She was 41 years old. She had grown up in Baltimore, in a house where the heat got cut off every February, and her mother worked double shifts at a laundry facility on North Avenue, and still came home to help Camille with her homework at the kitchen table under a single bulb. Camille had gotten a scholarship to study computer science. She had worked nights at a call center to pay for the things the scholarship didn't cover. She had graduated without debt because she had refused, in a way that felt almost physical, to let debt be one more thing that followed her out of that house. She had met Jordan Webb at 27, at a conference in Austin where they were both presenting at adjacent panels. He was charming in the way that some men are charming. Confident without specificity, the kind of man who made you feel seen without ever quite seeing you. They were married within 2 years. She had believed then that she was building something with him. What she was actually doing was building something for him. She wrote code for the first version of Stratum's core algorithm on a laptop, balanced on her knees, while Jordan was at networking dinners. She was the one who spotted the data structuring error that would have cost them their first enterprise client. She was the one who stayed on the phone for 4 hours with a venture capital associate, walking him through the technical architecture in plain language until the man understood enough to bring it to his partners. The check came through on a Tuesday. Jordan took the team out to celebrate. He gave a speech. He did not mention her name. She told herself it didn't matter. What mattered was the work. 3 years into the company, Jordan asked for a divorce. He had met someone at a conference in Copenhagen. He was very calm about it. He used the word amicable twice in the same conversation. He told her he hoped they could remain respectful. She sat across the kitchen table from him and thought about the algorithm and the call, and the Tuesday, the check arrived, and the speech, and she said, very quietly, that she was sure they could. She did not fight him. She did not tell anyone what she knew or what she had built. She walked out of the marriage and the company with the settlement her lawyer negotiated, and the intellectual property rights to a secondary piece of software that Jordan had considered unimportant, and that Camille, even then, even in the middle of all of it, had quietly known was not. She took that software, and she went to work. The invitation arrived on a Thursday morning, hand-delivered to her office on the 14th floor of a building in San Francisco's Mission District that she had purchased outright 18 months earlier. It was cream-colored, heavy stock, embossed lettering. You are cordially invited to the official launch of Stratum AI's Horizon platform. There was a handwritten note in the margin, in Jordan's handwriting. Thought you should see what we've built. The use of we was deliberate. She understood that immediately. The invitation was not a gesture of goodwill. It was a trophy being shown to the animal it had been taken from. Her assistant, a young woman named Priya, stood in the doorway with the expression of someone who had already read the note and was waiting to be told how to feel about it. Camille held the card for a long moment. She set it on her desk, face up, straightened it, and told Priya to confirm her attendance. Priya said, "Are you sure?" Camille said, "Tell them yes." That evening, she called her oldest friend, a woman named Denise, who had known her since the Baltimore house with the single kitchen bulb, and Denise said, "Why would you go to that man's party?" And Camille said, "Because I was invited." And there was a pause on the line, and Denise said, "Camille," and Camille said, "I'll be fine." And she meant it in a way she couldn't fully explain yet, even to herself. What she did not tell Denise, and what Jordan did not know, was that in the 2 years since the divorce, the secondary software she had walked out of the marriage with had become something else entirely. She had rebuilt it, refined it, and in a category of enterprise data security that was about to matter enormously to a specific class of institutional investor, it had become the most sought-after tool in its space. Her company was called Osei Technologies. It had 41 employees and had just been valued, in a quiet Series B round that had not yet been made public, at $900 million. The lead investor in that round was a firm called Meridian Capital Group. Meridian Capital Group was the largest outside shareholder in Stratum AI. Camille had known this for 6 months. She had not engineered it. She had simply done the work, and the work had taken her here. And when the Meridian partners asked her, 8 weeks before the Stratum launch, to attend the event as their guest and representative, she had understood that life had a grammar of its own that had nothing to do with intention. She had said yes to that too. The night of the launch, Camille arrived at the venue, a converted warehouse in Soma that had been transformed into something that looked like the inside of a very expensive idea, in a black car, with 2 members of her security team. This was standard practice for her now, not performance. She had received credible threats twice in the past year from competitors in a space where intellectual property disputes turned ugly, and the threats were not from strangers. Her security director had established protocol, and Camille followed protocol. She wore a deep green dress, structured at the shoulder, and her hair was natural and pinned back with a single gold clip that had belonged to her mother. She did not look like someone who had come to make a point. She looked like someone who had come because she had been asked to. The venue was already full when she arrived. 400 people in the kind of clothing that signaled access, the specific casualness of people who had never needed to dress to impress because the impression was already made. Projection screens along the walls cycled through graphics of the Horizon platform's interface, clean and confident. A string quartet played in the corner. There were waiters with champagne and small plates of things arranged with the kind of precision that costs more than it looks. Jordan was near the center of the room when she entered. He saw her before she saw him. She knew this because she saw his face change, the specific rearrangement of a man whose well-rehearsed narrative has just encountered a variable it didn't account for. He had expected her to arrive alone, she imagined. He had expected, perhaps, a woman who looked diminished. What passed instead was a woman who moved through his space with the unhurried steadiness of someone who had no reason to hurry. His new fiancée, a woman named Elise, stood beside him in a white dress that was either very brave or very confident for a product launch. She was watching Camille with an expression that was not unkind but was very watchful. Jordan crossed the room. He extended a hand. He said, "Camille, you came." She shook his hand. She said, "You invited me." He smiled. There was something behind it that was doing a great deal of work. "You look well," he said. "Thank you," she said. "Congratulations on the launch." He wanted to say something else. She could see it gathering behind his eyes. He had probably rehearsed it. Instead, a man appeared at his elbow, one of his senior engineers, and said there was something that needed his attention at the presentation stage. And Jordan looked briefly grateful for the interruption and said he'd find her later and moved away. One of the Meridian partners, a tall woman named Frances, who wore her silver hair in a sharp cut and had built 3 funds before this one, appeared at Camille's side within minutes and said, "Glad you came. There are some people I'd like you to meet." The next hour was like that. Introductions, conversations, the particular texture of rooms where money is deciding where to go next. Camille moved through it with ease, because she had learned, over the past 2 years, how to be comfortable in rooms that once would have made her feel she needed to justify her presence. She had paid for that ease, not with money, with the particular price of being underestimated so many times that you stopped being surprised by it and started being strategic about it. At some point during the evening, she found herself standing, near a cluster of guests that included Jordan's head of product and two journalists she recognized from publications that covered enterprise technology. The head of product, a man named Curtis, who had been at Stratum since the beginning and who had once, years ago, thanked Camille privately for a piece of technical guidance that he said had saved a major deliverable, caught her eye across the group and gave her a small nod that she acknowledged but did not dwell on. The presentations began at 9. Jordan took the stage, and the room quieted. He spoke well. She had always known that about him. He had the ability to describe something technical in a way that made it feel inevitable. Like, of course, it had to work this way. Like the idea had been waiting for exactly this person to find it. She listened from the back of the room with a glass of water in her hand, and she felt something she had not expected to feel. Not bitterness, and not satisfaction either. Something quieter than both. The recognition of a chapter that was ending in real time. He spoke for 22 minutes. He mentioned the team. He mentioned the investors. He did not mention her name. She had not expected him to. The not expecting no longer cost her what it once had. What happened after the presentation was not something she had planned, and was not something she would ever be able to fully separate from the particular timing of the universe. Francis, the Meridian partner, took the stage after Jordan to speak briefly about the firm's position. She said the standard things about vision and confidence and market timing. Then she said, because Francis was the kind of person who said things plainly, that Meridian's portfolio decisions were guided by a core principle. They bet on the builders, not just the building. She said that in the past 6 months, their most significant technical due diligence in the enterprise AI security space had been guided by a builder whose understanding of the underlying architecture was, in her view, unmatched by anyone they had encountered. She looked toward the back of the room. Camille Osei, she said, whose company Osei Technologies represents what we believe is the foundational layer this entire ecosystem has been missing. The room turned, not all at once. In the rolling, registering way that rooms turn when something unexpected has been said, and people are locating the subject of it. Camille did not look triumphant. She nodded once briefly and lifted her water glass slightly in acknowledgement, the way you acknowledge any fact. She was present in the room without needing it to be about her. She could see Jordan's face from where she stood. It was very still. The stillness of a man processing an equation that isn't resolving the way it was supposed to. He had invited her here to see his empire. What he had not known was that the people who held the financial future of that empire already knew her name, already trusted her judgment, and had just said so out loud in front of 400 people. Elise, beside him, said something quietly near his ear. He did not respond. Afterward, in the slow dispersal of the crowd, Curtis approached Camille and shook her hand and said, I want you to know that I know. That was all. She said, I know you do. And they both understood what they meant and left it there. A woman Camille didn't recognize stopped her near the coat check and said she worked in equity research and had been following Osei Technologies for the past quarter and asked if Camille had 10 minutes the following week. Camille said she'd have her assistant reach out. She found Jordan once more near the exit. He was standing with two of his board members, his jacket now slightly loosened, the evening's architecture beginning to show wear. He looked at her with the expression of a man who had prepared for one conversation and was now facing a different one entirely. Camille, he said. Jordan, she said. I didn't know you were involved with Meridian, he said. You didn't ask, she said. There was a pause. One of the board members shifted almost imperceptibly. The other studied his phone. Jordan said, The algorithm, the original one. He stopped. He started again. You know I always, she said. You don't have to, he said. I want to say it. She waited. He said, You were more of a part of this than I made it seem. Then I made it. I know that. I've known it. She looked at him for a moment, not with warmth and not with coldness, with the simple regard of someone who no longer needed the acknowledgement and therefore could hear it without it meaning more than it was. Okay, she said. She picked up her coat. Her security lead was already near the door. She said good night to Francis. She walked out into the San Francisco evening, which was cool and smelled like eucalyptus from the park, 3 blocks over. And she stood on the sidewalk for a moment while the car came around. Denise called before she'd reached the end of the block. She must have been watching the live stream of the presentations that the venue had broadcast for overflow guests. Camille answered. Denise said, Francis said your name. Camille said, she did. On stage, in front of everyone. Yes. A pause. Then Denise said, girl. And Camille laughed. A real laugh. The kind that had nothing performed in it. The kind that came from the place where Baltimore kitchen tables and second-shift mothers and 17-year-old girls who refused to be buried by what they were born into, where all of it lived, accumulated and converted into something else. Something that did not have a name in the language of the rooms she now moved through, but that she carried anyway. All of it, every single piece of it, without apology. The car arrived. She got in. The city moved past the window in its particular way, lit up and indifferent, and hers in no official sense but familiar now, in the way that a place becomes familiar when you have stopped needing it to accept you. She did not look back at the venue. She was thinking, already, about the work that was waiting for her in the morning.